On my 28th birthday last year, I made a mid-year resolution. I decided I was finally going to adopt all the healthy habits that I'd been putting off for so long, a promise I'd been making myself for several years now. But what made this year different was that what started as a very generic self-improvement plan slowly morphed into something I've been calling the year of new things. It's a personal challenge, largely defined by a very conscious decision on my part to do things that I'm not sure that I'm going to do well. The unexpected consequence of this has been that I'm becoming really comfortable with failure. So if you follow me on Twitter, you're likely to read the chronicles of my awkward life that read something like, soccer ball to the face, check, hashtag year of new things, or hard to believe I've been so productive today, considering I started this morning by accidentally drinking sour almond milk. The mental endeavor of the year of new things has been a revelation for me. 4 years ago, I was a small town bartender with 3 college degrees, and I was suffering from crippling panic attacks. Terrified to go to work, to eat, to fall asleep, I curled in on myself almost completely, paralyzed by a fog that didn't just last minutes or hours, but sometimes days, weeks, or even months at a time. The physical toll of this period of time on my body was so intense and so pervasive that when I finally came to understand and cope with my condition, I actually had to retrain myself how to breathe normally. Because over the course of so many fear-filled months, I had acquired the habit of inhaling so deeply that I was constantly hyperventilating and I was exhausted. My move to Birmingham 2 years ago was a part of a self-imposed mental health treatment plan. The stress of the transition, I guarantee you, was almost enough to bring back the old demons. But soon after getting here, I became intoxicated by the newness of everyday life and enamored with this city and grateful for it taking me in. With a newfound sense of everyday adventure, I began to actively throw myself into awkward situations just for the thrill, the adrenaline rush of making it out alive. These small steps were the beginning of the year of new things, and I didn't know it when I started, but I'd timed it just right. Research says that our brains experience a final growth spurt in our 20s, and we don't know when it's going to happen. But when it does, our brains are a lot more flexible, more generously open to change. This is the sort of opportunity, as you can imagine, that very literally comes once in a lifetime. And I think we do ourselves a disservice to not take advantage of it when it does. But what I found more fascinating than the science behind this so-called developmental sweet spot is the fact that the concept is actually applicable in other contexts. So for example, if we think of a city, in our case Birmingham, as a body, as a living, breathing thing, we the people make up the brain. We make decisions, we determine actions. But like with the biological application, we are a lot more effective when we work together. Because a single neuron firing over here by itself can't accomplish much on its own, but multiple neurons firing in succession, they wire together, and that's how you create a new connection in the brain. So as change makers in a city, I think we have to remember that we're more effective when we work together. And in Birmingham, we're already seeing the positive effects of this. So as people have mentioned before me, local business, neighborhoods, arts and music, they're on the rise, and we're getting national attention because of it. But if we want to take advantage of this developmental sweet spot that we're in Birmingham and push for continued growth, we have to explore areas outside of our comfort zone, because it's outside of our comfort zones that we discover greatness. Now, as you can imagine, if you were to ask me, I would tell you that the easiest, quickest way to get out of your comfort zone is to deliberately try some new things. And I think we do that pretty well in Birmingham already, and we also do a very good job of advocating for our city, which is a crucial first step. But there's that one hang-up. If I lived in the city, I'd have to send my kids to private schools line. I hear it a lot when I tell people what I do for a living, and while I don't think I'll ever quite understand how to react to it, the sheer prevalence of that statement captures the extent to which public school systems often remain an enormous mental barrier to continued progress for a lot of cities, including our own. That being said, what I promise I won't do today is ask you guys to change the decisions that you make on behalf of your own families. What I will do, however, is challenge you to help me change the circumstances. Now, it's been my experience that we're really quick to engage in movements that encourage the betterment of our community, such as those that advocate to eat local, buy local, or in favor of city living. So in the spirit of trying some new things, why not advocate to educate local as well? After all, the success of a public school system is arguably just as important as the success of local business and neighborhoods to the health of a community. In fact, it's been said that one high school graduate may contribute an additional $127,000 to taxpayers in the community over his or her lifetime, which could be hugely impactful in Birmingham, where currently 4 out of 10 ninth graders will not graduate from Birmingham City Schools. So we cannot continue to ignore the fact that the health of our school system is intrinsically tied to the health of our city. But just knowing that, just acknowledging that fact isn't going to be enough. I think we really have to feel and believe that we're responsible for the school system. And this is going to require us to undergo a fundamental ideological shift in responsibility towards the collective Birmingham public. Let me illustrate it for you like this. Parents and non-parents alike, if you saw a child that was not your own fall on the playground and nobody went to help that child, what would you do? Likely, you'd go to help that child. You don't have to take him home. I would actually strongly discourage you taking children home from the playground, but you do what you can. You pick the child up, you dust the dirt off his knees, you help him find his parent or caregiver. You don't just watch that child struggle because he's not your own. Now, I think we have to have this same attitude towards our public school system, because the other sentiment implied by the "if I lived in the city, I'd send my kids to private schools" line is a really uncomfortable disregard for the kids who are in that school system. We've got to stop thinking about those kids as throwaways, because at the end of the day, the lives and the futures of those students are just as important as the lives and the futures of students in more affluent suburbs. And I think we tend to ignore that fact. I think we tend to ignore that fact sometimes because it's easier, and if it's not true, we don't have anybody to blame. But at the end of the day, when the adjectives fall away, children are children. So once we assume collective responsibility for our school system, we can start to engage in collective strategic action that improves student achievement outcomes in our urban school system. This can take place in a variety of ways, but one of which is building bridges. We should be building bridges for students between their current and their future selves so they can visualize what it looks like to be successful adults. This should manifest itself in meaningful career and technical experiences facilitated by the local business community, such as job shadowing, site tours, guest speakers, internships, you name it. Next, we have to remember that we keep academic standards high and do what we can to support students so that they can be competitive in their post-high school lives. So, for example, if the majority of students in an urban school district do not have the standardized test scores to gain admittance to their local colleges and universities, the question we ask ourselves should be, what do we do to raise those scores, not how low can we set the bar. Lastly, we need to support our students in their mental and emotional development through constructive coaching and mentoring, all the while reminding them, as we should also remind ourselves, that it's okay to fail sometimes, as long as we are learning from our mistakes and continuing to push the boundaries of what it is that we think we can accomplish. To do these things, guys, we're going to have to call on ourselves as community members, not necessarily as parents, but as corporate executives, as young professionals, as educators, higher ed institutions, neighborhood presidents, city government. We use the resources that we have at our disposal towards the strategic implementation of programs that directly targets students in our city school system. Because, sure, the numbers are very compelling. The salary difference, the likelihood of ending up in prison or becoming a productive citizen, the effect of education on physical and mental health. But the more critical loss that we face is something that we'll never be able to accurately measure, because we will never know what we miss out on by not helping these students reach their full potential. We'll never know what they might have done if they never get the chance to do it. Now, as someone who took a very long time to get on the path to realizing my own full potential, too long, I can tell you sometime over coffee or a beer just how emotionally devastating it is to not be your best self, to not be able to do the great things that you think you're supposed to do. And that's why I do what I do. I feel a lot of personal responsibility for these students, but I can't sit with every one of them. Neither can you. What we do as individuals and as small groups in isolation, it changes lives. But it doesn't change our city. That's something that will require all of us. So you probably know what I want you to do, and here's the thing. First thing first, take a walk inside a Birmingham City school and put a face to these names. Make the conscious decision to see students in terms of their future potential and not as a product of their circumstances. Take some time and start thinking about what it is that you're going to contribute to this coming sea change, because if we want to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for growth, to honor the legacy of progress in Birmingham, and gosh darn it, really nail this education reform thing, it's going to have to be a group effort. We have to educate local, and we have to advocate for all of our students, not just the ones we share a home with, because we just don't know when or where or under what circumstances their lives are going to intersect with theirs. And because our city can't reach its full potential if the ones who will inherit it don't reach theirs. Now, how closely these two things are intertwined, the potential of a city and that of its students, it should excite you. It excites me, because tucked inside of these schools are endless possibilities. Right now, we've got about 25,000 little someones who are going to do 25,000 incredible somethings one day, but for now, it's our responsibility to help them get there. And it won't be easy. It will be hard work, and I think if we don't feel like giving up sometimes, then we're not pushing hard enough. But greatness doesn't come easy. And if we accept this challenge to educate local and advocate for all our students, if we thwart the fear of failure and push the limits of what it is that we can accomplish when we work together, well, then we'll get to see what awaits us on the other side of those students' success. And finding out what that is, I can tell you from personal experience, is the most exciting part. Thank you.